At the beginning of the movie, Yahiro sees Yabu struggling to lift a heavy wire and immediately rushes to help, saying, "Don't forget your hernia." Yabu thanks him, admitting that even spinal screws didn't make much difference. Later, Yahiro's boss offers him a promotion to product line manager, mentioning his 11 years of service. He adds, in confidence, that he plans for Yahiro to run the mill eventually. Grateful but humble, Yahiro suggests allowing Yabu, who has worked there for decades. He then shares his dream of moving to Tokyo to become a TV personality. The boss laughs, saying, "TV is dead," but Yahiro murmurs, "Choose a path no one else has taken." His boss gives him a business card, telling him that this person will help him in Tokyo. Yahiro finally arrives in Tokyo, where he meets Kiyoshi, his boss's friend and the president of Fuji Talent Agency. Kiyoshi tells him, "You'd be perfect for living in it," and Yahiro asks, "What's that?" But Kiyoshi only smiles in response. The next day, Yahiro visits a real estate office, where an agent shows him several stigmatized properties. When Yahiro asks what that means, the agent explains they're places linked to deaths that cause psychological distress, like suicides, murders, or mysterious incidents. He mentions that struggling young entertainers often rent such places. Then he shows Yahiro an apartment where the previous tenant committed suicide, adding, "It's cheap because it was never properly cleaned up." Next, Yahiro moves into the apartment and sets up his camera, following Kiyoshi's advice to keep filming. 3 nights later, Yahiro begins to laugh softly in his sleep, and we see a pale, ghostly hand slide slowly across his body. He murmurs, "It tickles," and the ghost sinks its teeth into his neck, causing Yahiro to jolt awake, saying it hurts. He then touches his neck, and to his shock, he finds blood on his fingers. He quickly gets up to check his neck, but to his horror, he sees the reflection of the ghost in the window, its head rubbing against the wall. Yet when he turns around, there's no one there. The next morning, Yahiro receives a text from Kiyoshi about a TV commercial extra role scheduled for February 21. Next, we see him at the shooting location, where he is paired with a girl. They stare at each other awkwardly for a moment before she says, "Nice to meet you," and he replies, "Nice to meet you too." The girl grabs his hand, but he says his hands are sweaty. But she still grabs his hand and says, "They have to," saying he is her boyfriend's for the day. She tells him to make believe that she is his girlfriend for real. The shooting begins, and Yahiro gradually grows more comfortable with the girl. After a while, the director calls out a rap, and the girl lets go of his hand, says goodbye, and walks away. Later, Yahiro regrets not getting her number, but Kiyoshi teases, "Only in your dreams." Then Kiyoshi says, "Let's go drinking," and takes off running. Yahiro follows, but Kiyoshi moves quickly and disappears into a building. Yahiro enters a bar after him, where a woman asks, "Table for one?" And, shocked, he wonders aloud, "Where's Kiyoshi?" The woman leads him to a corner, makes him sit, and says, "I'll send a girl over to you right away." Yahiro quickly checks his wallet and realizes he doesn't have much money left. Soon, a girl approaches him, and noticing his stunned expression, she says, "You look like you've seen a ghost." After this, they introduce themselves properly, and Yahiro asks if she's an actor, to which Karin replies that she can't make a living from it, so she works here part-time. When she asks about him, Yahiro tells her that he wants to become a TV personality. The next day, they rehearse for an audition at Yahiro's apartment, but he struggles to get it right and says, "I'm useless." But she replies, "You're just who I need." Surprised by her words, he falls silent, and after an awkward pause, he reaches for his phone but realizes it's not on the table. He steps aside to look for it, and she asks, "Should I call it?" She dials his number, and someone answers, but all she hears is static and a voice telling her to leave. Saddened, she quietly gets up and starts leaving, and when he asks what's wrong, she notices the band-aid on his neck and remarks, "You must be a real player." After she leaves, Yahiro begins cleaning his apartment when he suddenly notices human nails embedded in the floor. Intrigued, he cautiously picks them up with trembling hands and wonders aloud, "Whose nails are these?" Later, we see Yahiro at the auditions, introducing himself to the panel, When Kumuro notices that his face looks distorted in his profile photo, a man asks, "Why do you want to do this?" To which Yahiro replies that he's been a fan of the program from the start and has often imagined himself being part of it. The man recording him suddenly notices a ghostly hand resting on Yahiro's shoulder and becomes visibly frightened. They ask, "What's wrong?" While Kumuro stares at Yahiro, her expression tense and wary. Later, Kumuro approaches him and begins sniffing him, making Yahiro feel awkward. She then comments, "Spiritually defenseless," and with a smile on her face she says, "And he is caring." Confused, he looks at her, and she pulls a card from her bag, telling him, "Call me anytime." Later that night, Yahiro struggles to sleep when the doorbell suddenly rings. Curious, he answers the intercom, but when he receives no response, he turns it off and starts to leave, only for the bell to ring again. This time, he notices a woman standing outside the apartment across from his, but she suddenly appears in front of his own apartment, and in the next moment, she vanishes. Later, while Yahiro is sleeping, an invisible force suddenly begins to strangle him, but the camera captures a shadow across the floor, and strange orbs appear on the footage. Yahiro struggles to free himself, finally sitting up, gasping for breath, but then he is seen rubbing his head against the wall. He shows the footage to Corinne, leaving her visibly stunned. Suddenly, something strange happens to Corinne, and when she straightens up, she appears possessed. Yahiro is shocked to see her like this, and she asks, "Am I being pushy? Do you like someone else?" She then says, "Sure you do, the girl in front of you," and then she hugs him. Yahiro struggles and pushes her away, sending her to the floor. Panicked, he rushes to check on her, but Corinne asks, "What did I do?" Just then, she notices a hand on his shoulder, and before she can react, a ghostly head appears, staring directly at her. She screams in terror and flees, leaving Yahiro confused. Yahiro stands in front of the mirror, looking at his shoulder, when he suddenly freezes in terror, seeing a ghost looming behind him. And in a panic, Yahiro smashes the mirror, injuring his arm. He notices something behind the shattered glass, but as he reaches for it, an unseen force suddenly chokes him. The next day, Kumuro takes out the bag and warns Yahiro that it carries a curse. She opens a box inside and reveals an eye within. She explains that the hex brings harm to anyone nearby, saying, "This place is haunted and attracts roaming evil forces, sucking them in like a pump." She urges him to move out, and when Yahiro says, "Then the ghost will be all alone," Kumuro warns him sternly, "If you're too kind, she will claim you." Yahiro leaves the house and spends the night at an internet cafe. He gets a call from an unknown number, and when he answers it, the caller, Ogura, from Minato Television, says they saw his video and want him on their show as a live paranormal reporter. He calls Corinne, excitedly telling her that he's received his first offer, likely for a shoot at a haunted inn in Tochigi. Corinne warns him to be careful, and he reassures her he will be with the crew. Next, we see him at the Omiya Inn, where the owner comes out and tells them that they cannot shoot in the banquet hall or upstairs, as there are guests. The producer pulls the owner aside and offers him some money, which the man keeps and says he'll be right back. They overhear the owner talking to someone and laughing maniacally. Curious about who he's speaking to, Yahiro steps forward and peeks inside, only to see the man talking to himself. He also notices several strange masks displayed around the room. After a while, the owner comes out and says they can go ahead with the shoot. Next, we see Yahiro in his room, reading his script, when he hears a noise coming from upstairs and notices the lamp swaying. Annoyed, he decides to go upstairs to confront the guests, but when he gets there, the room is empty. Confused, he turns to leave when suddenly, a girl appears out of nowhere and walks into the dark room. Terrified, he rushes to the crew and tells them he saw a girl walking upstairs. The director asks, "Did she have legs?" And Yahiro says yes, to which the director replies, "Then she's just a guest." And everyone laughs it off, dismissing his concern. Later, as the shoot begins, Osui suddenly hears a woman's voice through his headphones and tells everyone to stay quiet on set. But the producer insists that no one is speaking. Osui hands him the headphones, saying, "Listen for yourself. and as the producer puts them on, he hears the same woman's voice. Curious, Yahiro asks if he can listen too, and when he puts on the headphones, he hears the woman too, and he tells them that she is talking to a little girl. Then they go live, and Yahiro introduces himself, saying living in stigmatized properties is his thing. Then, in a trance-like state, he says there is a girl ghost here who came here to recover from a terrible sickness, but she wasn't getting better. She was so miserable that one day her mother smothered her. He then snaps out of it and asks, "Did he say something?" Just then, a girl's voice echoes through the hall, almost like a whisper. The crew and the host panel freeze, and every microphone picks up the trembling echo that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The main host turns to Yahiro and says, "You have got what it takes." And Yahiro says they will have a tour of spots where sightings were made, like the back room and the garden. After the shoot, the director tells Yahiro that he's a great improviser, especially with the ghost girl. Now, as the crew prepares to leave, Yahiro decides to stay the night. Later, a female ghost appears in the toilet, but unaware, Yahiro leaves without noticing her. Meanwhile, Asui listens to the recording and realizes it's reversed. When he plays it backward, he hears something that terrifies him, and he immediately wonders if Yahiro is okay. Back at the inn, Yahiro is in the bathroom when the ghost of a girl appears, but when he looks up, no one is there. Terrified, he rushes back to his room and gets into bed. But suddenly, thumping sounds start coming from above, as if someone is jumping on the floor. He decides to go upstairs, following the source of the thumping, and he finds it coming from a room. He opens the door, only to see a woman smothering her daughter, Shizuko, who is stamping her feet in desperation. Yahiro is horrified, but the woman suddenly turns to him and begins crawling toward him. Frozen with fear, he watches as she approaches him and lets out a wail, causing him to collapse in terror. But he jolts awake in his bed, gasping for breath, and wonders, was it a dream? Later, he confronts the owner, asking, "What happened in the back room?" The owner leads him to the room, and Yahiro is shocked to see the door boarded up. He says, "This isn't what I saw?" And the owner asks, "You saw them?" But then he tells him to forget it and storms off. Yahiro takes some food items from his bag, places them outside the door, and prays for the peace of their souls. A few days later, Yahiro meets Corinne, who has landed a small role in a movie, but will be away for a while. She comments, "You've changed a little," to which he has no reply. Then she suggests, "Let's share locations." Later, he meets Kiyoshi and asks, "Is it payday yet?" And when Kiyoshi replies, "Not yet," Yahiro says, "Then you'll pay for the coffee and drinks." Next, we see him back at the real estate office, where the agent recommends a shared house, explaining that tenants don't stay long because they claim it's haunted. Yahiro asks the tenants, "Is it true they have a ghost?" And they reply that they've never seen one. However, Yahiro notices the ghost of an old lady standing on the stairs behind them. He tells them that he plans to submit a video of the house to a news site, and one of them says, "I don't think anything will happen." 2 days after moving into the third stigmatized property, Yahiro hears a sound in the night, the mournful cry of an old woman from Kaito's room. The next day, Yahiro tells them about the old woman's spirit and convinces them to summon it, saying, maybe she has something to say. Everyone places their fingers on a coin, and Yahiro asks, "Are you a man or a woman?" Nothing happens at first, but then the coin begins to move, eventually stopping at woman. Yahiro then asks, "How old are you?" And the coin starts moving again, repeatedly landing on number 4 and number 9. Terrified, they pull their hands back, but the coin continues sliding across the board on its own. Kaito, shaken, says, "Let's stop." Yet the coin moves deliberately, spelling out the words, "My blood." Koyama suddenly notices blood on Kaito's face, dripping from a crack in the ceiling above them. Kaito screams in terror, "It's hot!" When they try to grab him and take him upstairs, he begins laughing maniacally. He shows the footage to Kimura, who says a stubborn spirit has possessed him. Yahiro asks, "Is it an old woman?" And she replies, she can't tell, as her face is pulverized. That night, Yahiro checks his phone and sees that Corinne is back, just 3 hours away. Suddenly, a noise draws his attention, and he sees Kaito on the rooftop, walking in a trance. Yahiro calls out, desperate to wake him, but a ghostly woman suddenly pounces on him, and before he can react, she plunges off the rooftop with him, landing him on his face. They later learns the previous tenant, an old woman, had jumped to her death. He wonders, was Kaito possessed by her spirit? They never find out, but Kaito survives, and that marked the end of their time living together. He tells Kiyoshi that he isn't confident he can continue with living in it. And when Kiyoshi asks why, he says, because my friend was maimed, and it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't moved in. Kiyoshi replies, you're too caring, and that creates dependency. He goes on to explain that ghosts are drawn to kind-hearted people as well, which is exactly why he chose him. The next day, he meets Corinne and tells her that he left the house and is now back at the internet cafe. Corinne hesitantly suggests that he move in with her, leaving him surprised by her offer. Next, they are in Corinne's house, and she asks, what made him want to be a TV personality? Yahiro explains, my dad died when I was in elementary school, and I must have looked sad, so the other kids left me alone. Then I saw a TV personality at an event. The personality said, everyone's life has a crossroads. Many choose the easy path, free of obstacles, while the rocky, difficult path is often avoided. But I know this for sure. Choose the path no one else takes. The harder path will shape you into a caring person. Yahiro says, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't met him. Then asks why she became an actor, but she walks to her room without answering. The next day, Yahiro senses a presence out of the corner of his eye, but the moment he turns to look, it's gone. That night, Yahiro hears Corinne's sobbing echoing in the house. He goes to her room to check on her when, suddenly, a flash of lightning splits the sky, and he finds her hiding inside the closet, but she tells him to leave her alone, leaving him in shock. The next morning, he finds her completely normal, as if nothing had happened the night before. He asks Kumuro if she thinks Corinne might be possessed, wondering if he brought a spirit into her place. Kumuro tells him to stop blaming everything on spirits, but he should just keep an eye on her. Later, when he returns home, he realizes that Corinne isn't there. Checking his phone, he sees that her location is over 4 hours and 27 minutes away. The next morning, he asks her where she was last night, but she calmly replies that she was at home. That night, he checks his phone and sees that her location is 5 hours and 35 minutes away. Growing suspicious, he decides to look through her room and finds her portfolio. Pulling out his phone, he searches for her past, but to his shock, there are no results about her anywhere. Suddenly, he hears a noise and turns to see Corinne standing behind him. Realizing he was digging into her past, she calls him a snoop. He asks, "Who are you really?" But instead of answering, she runs out of the room, and when he chases after her, he finds that she has vanished. Later, while he sleeps, Yahiro suddenly wakes up, paralyzed and unable to move. A vision overtakes him, and when it fades, he sees a man standing nearby, staring silently, but the moment he sits up, the figure vanishes. Just then, his phone rings. It's his aunt, telling him that his mother is sick. He tells Kumuro he has to go home, and when she says living there was just getting interesting, he says he understands, but insists his mother needs him. He then calls Kiyoshi, only to find the number out of service. He rushes to his office, but the doors are locked, and a man tells him that the office has been empty for years. Confused, he calls his boss, explaining he can't reach Kiyoshi, and when asked who that is, Yahiro says, "You gave me his card." He then quickly pulls out his purse and checks the business card, only to be stunned to find the name isn't Kiyoshi's at all, but Satoru Motoyama. Later at home, Corinne confides that she has never told anyone about her father, revealing that she is a murderer's daughter. She explains that her father was an actor, not very famous, but often away, and her mother began seeing a regular from her bar and eventually stopped coming home altogether. She tells him that it was once just her and her father, and she was happy then. She felt safe with him, but that peace didn't last long. One night, her mother showed up with her boyfriend, demanding custody of Corinne, which her father refused. Corinne didn't want to go with them, so she hid, But the man found her and tried to drag her away, even striking her. Her father intervened, and in the struggle that followed, the man fell down the stairs and died, and her father was sent to prison for it. After high school, she left the children's home and began working. But rumors soon spread at her workplace that her father was a criminal. Around that time, her father was released and called her, yet she couldn't bring herself to answer. She finally confides that her real name is Riho Fujiyoshi. Yahiro gently tells her that she survived so much and still did her best. He urges her to stop hurting herself and tells her she's home now. When she hesitantly asks if he's sure about her, he smiles and says, "When you come home, you say, 'I'm home.'" Then he adds softly, "We'll be together," before pulling her into an embrace. Later, as they are leaving the house, the door suddenly closes on its own just as Corinne steps out. They try to open it, but suddenly, a spirit possesses Corinne, and before they can react, she suddenly runs away. Yahiro runs out onto the road, desperately searching for her, and he takes out his phone to track her location. It leads him to a room inside a nearby building, where he finds Karen sitting with her head bowed. Yahiro then looks ahead and is shocked to see her father's dead body lying in front of them, and it's Kiyoshi. It is then revealed that the person Yahiro had been meeting all this time was actually Kiyoshi's spirit. Yahiro says, "I went to Tokyo and met Kiyoshi's ghost. He made me the stigmatized property guy, which led me to Corinne and eventually Kiyoshi's body. Maybe this was my destiny, the way it was always meant to be." After Kiyoshi's funeral, Yahiro tells Karen that he thinks he will keep living in stigmatized properties. Corinne says she supports his dreams and tells him to pursue them. A few days later, Yahiro encounters the man who motivated him in an elevator. But as he steps out, he senses something strange. He sees that the man is not alone. A ghost of a little girl stands beside him. And the movie ends here.